This is Dr. Ben Weitz with the Rational Wellness Podcast, bringing you the cutting-edge information on health and nutrition from the latest scientific research and by interviewing the top experts in the field. Please subscribe to the Rational Wellness Podcast on iTunes and YouTube, and sign up for my free ebook on my website by going to drweitz.com. Let's get started on your road to better health. Good morning, Rational Wellness Podcasters. Thank you so much for joining me again today. For those of you who enjoy this podcast, please go to iTunes and leave us a ratings and review so more people can find out about the Rational Wellness Podcast. So our topic for today is depression and anxiety, what to do about it. For depression in the United States, it's very common if you go to see your doctor that he's going to prescribe a medication like a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or SSRI, like Prozac, Zoloft, Lexapro, and these are among the most commonly prescribed medications in the United States. And they are prescribed not just for depression and anxiety, but for a whole host of other disorders: obsessive compulsive disorder, eating disorders, arthritis, chronic pain, neuropathic pain, IBS, migraines, ADHD, addiction, sleep disorders, and now mind wandering. The problem is that these medications, it's not clear that we have any idea how they work or even if they do work. In fact, it's only a conjecture that depression is actually caused by a deficiency in serotonin or norepinephrine. In fact, there's never been a successful human study linking low serotonin levels with depression. According to a recent article in the New York Times, the long-term use of depressants is surging in the U.S. According to federal data, some 15.5 million Americans have been taking these types of medications for at least 5 years, and the rate has almost doubled since 2010. Unfortunately, most of these antidepressants were originally only approved for short-term usage by the FDA, and there's only a few studies that have actually looked at the safety of taking these for longer than a few years, yet many patients are put on these indefinitely. And then when they try to get off them, it becomes very, very hard to get off them. They have horrible, a large percentage of patients, a significant percentage of patients have very difficult time getting off these antidepressants, and a lot of them just stay on them because they can't get off. So to talk about this and some other related topics, I'm very pleased that my friend David Foreman, the herbal pharmacist, is here. And we're going to talk about some alternatives of other things you can do for depression and anxiety. Hi, David. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. And for the people that listen to your podcast that heard that background on antidepressants, if they have depression already, now they're even more depressed. So, yeah, and I don't want to make light of their situation. I mean, you and I have a cool rapport. I think we have very similar beliefs. So, but one of the things I like to do is just I like to be real about things. So hopefully I don't offend anybody by my commentary. Depression is definitely a very serious thing. As a guy that owned a pharmacy and started, I was still owning my pharmacy when the introduction of those SSRI drugs you were just talking about came out, and at one point. One of them, and I'm not going to mention brands, but was actually the number one most prescribed drug in the world. So it's a big deal and it's a big topic. I feel like a lot of times people don't talk about it because who likes to talk about their mental health, right? I mean, if you're bringing up, unless you have really good mental health, right? Most of the time if you're bringing it up, it's basically a chink in your armor, and especially for guys, man, we're like bulletproof, we're like superheroes, and so it doesn't get talked about. So I'm glad we're covering this topic today.
Yeah, and I second your thoughts. I certainly sympathize with people who've been dealing with depression. I know it can be a very difficult situation to deal with, and if you've been taking these medications and they're working for you, all power to you. I just wanted to point out, some of the issues with these drugs, and I know quite a number of people who didn't really get much benefit from them, and then they have trouble getting off them. So we're just trying to get to the science behind these things. But certainly, if you're listening to this podcast and you're taking antidepressants or any other kind of medication that's been prescribed by your doctor, certainly don't stop it without talking to your doctor. That's the most important thing.
Definitely. Yeah, I can't stress that enough. And, I got to drive that one point home that you just said about the people that actually have, more severe cases of depression. A lot of times I run into those are the people who really want to get off of their meds. I recently did a couple of TV engagements on this topic in Phoenix, and I had people, emailing me, oh, my, wife has bipolar disorder, and, which is a more severe version, and she doesn't. They always don't want to take their meds. And I'm always, my thing is like, if you're that severe and you're doing well, why would you want to rock your boat? Like, because, and so that's one. And two is, if you haven't taken the medications for a long time, and maybe you do just have mild depression or mild anxiety, the side effects that people go through when they come off of those meds, like if you went cold turkey within a couple of days, you're going to feel horrible, like flu-like achy. You'll have focusing issues, sleep problems, more anxiety. We're now finding out, and I don't think they haven't been classified as addictive yet, but I feel like with all the things that people have going on, the anti-anxiety ones are for sure addictive, but antidepressants usually are not. But, these are things that people need to be weaned off of. And the cool thing is, a lot of things I'll talk about today, some of them can be integrated into your current regimen. But again, like you said, and I like to drive those points home just because people sometimes I feel like are thick-headed because they just want to stop having all the side effects from their meds and they're anxious to change. But you got to consult with your healthcare provider. It's got to be a team effort, but it can be done unless you really do have something more severe going on.
And in fact, I think this an excellent point to make here is I'm a big believer that everybody needs a team of people to help them. You should have, if you're dealing with psychological issues, you should have a psychological counselor. But I think most people would be best suited to not only have a traditional MD that they work with, but also a functional medicine practitioner like myself or yourself, who knows the nutritional end of things. And we should all be working together for the betterment of the patient and not one being better than the other.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if we were in the same room right now, I'd be high-fiving you on that one. I'm a high-fiver. That's like a fist bump, so we can do a virtual fist bump, all right? How about that?
I think everybody does a fist bump because they're paranoid about getting germs. And I'm a big believer in germs. I like germs.
Yeah, well, I know they exist. I believe. I feel like
our immune system.
I feel like if I believe in them too much, then I will get sick, and I pretty much just don't care. It's those moments where I have that mental. Perfect. It's those moments I have that mental weakness that they're actually going to bother me. That they do, and I'm like, oh, I had a weak moment.
There you go. The power of the mind. Right on. So, how do you want to start this conversation? What should patients do? When there's feeling a little depression, what's the first thing they should do you think?
All right. So this is where I love the fact that I came from traditional medicine and now I'm this natural medicine expert, because I feel like as opposed to people that are all in on just natural medicine, they hate when I say what I'm about to say. So if you're having,
and by the way, I'm not talking about somebody who's like about ready to hang themselves.
Okay, all right. That's not even funny. I'm sorry I laughed, but
no, I know exactly what you're talking about. You just, you're feeling a little blue. You can't quite get motivated. What would be not somebody with a long-term history of depression.
Well, yeah. So, if it's something that's, just kind of new and coming on, for one thing, I for years I've been preaching something called 4 pillars of health, which are diet. And I know these things will resonate with you as well. diet, exercise, spirituality, and supplements. I feel like in order to really be that truly healthy individual, you need to have a balance of all four of those components. Like you can't just eat right, or you can't just take supplements, or you can't just be a workout warrior, and you just can't pray the paint off the walls. You gotta have a balance of those things. And so usually when someone, and I'll throw myself into this equation because I've walked that world before. And the first thing is to really kind of do some introspective thinking about, which is more probably on the spiritual side of it, is like try to figure out what might be triggering you to feel that way. Are you having financial problems, or, is one of your kids, getting into trouble? Are your parents aging and you're worried about taking care of them? Dig inside yourself and try to figure out what the root of that, concern is. And perhaps even contact someone such as yourself, and say, I always feel like that's a good start. Start with someone that's open to the natural modalities, that is a qualified healthcare provider as well, which both of us are. And, let us get a better spin on it. Again, this conversation is really more for the people that, you're not a chronic depression person. Like if you are, that's a whole nother discussion, which we can have if we have time. And then look into, through guidance through this healthcare provider, there's definitely some things that we can do diet wise, so again, my 4 pillars, for me, getting out and getting some exercise is critical, because it helps take care of stress. Your body releases hormones it normally wouldn't, called endorphins, which would kind of give you that high uplifted feeling, not high like you're stoned, but high like, hey, you're just feeling better about yourself. Diet plays a huge role.
By the way, exercise also increases brain-derived neurotropic factors, so it makes it easy to read and learn things. So there's a lot of huge benefits to the brain from exercise.
Yeah, exactly. So then, you get into the diet part. What are you eating, drinking? Alcohol is a depressant. A lot of times people that are kind of feeling down or blue may have a cocktail or 2 or 3, to take the edge off. Or I was just traveling in Europe with one of my really good friends, and he kind of had a come to Jesus moment with me, not about myself, but about himself. He kind of rolled the bus over, and he's like, man, I'm dealing with so much stuff right now with my dad and my family and my work. And he goes, and I'm just drinking way too much right now because it helps numb that feeling. But alcohol is actually more of a depressant. It'll actually make the cycle go more and more. Or, people do a lot of caffeine, or if you got to feed your body, you got to feed your brain. And so you want to make sure you're eating a cleaner diet. Cleaner meaning avoiding all those processed, refined, sugary, starchy foods, and eating more fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, legumes, lean cuts of meat. Man, nothing better than like a salmon or whatever for the omega-3s for your nervous system. So diet plays a role in there. Spirituality, I'm not going to get into the religious side of things because everybody has a different way of doing it. For me, I'm a Christian, so I'll go back to my Bible and or look up passages, or I'll pray. I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but I feel like pick something and practice it, whatever it may be. And then there are supplements that you can take to help your body either re-nourish it or take the edge off. And I'm going to cover some of those later in this podcast, but that's the kind of approach I would take. And I know it's probably a long-winded answer for you there, but I felt like it all needed to be said.
Yeah, no, good. From my perspective, trying to apply a functional medicine perspective on it, which is the way I tend to look at things, depression is really just a symptom. It doesn't tell you what the cause is. So we need to find out what the root cause of depression is. And, there's a whole series of things that can cause it. You mentioned nutritional deficiencies, lack of exercise. If you have a lot of inflammation in your body, you're going to end up with inflammation in your brain. That's going to cause depression. If there's an imbalance in your hormones in your body, that can lead to depression. There's a whole series of things. If your gut, the connection between the gut and the brain, huge. 80% of the neurotransmitters are produced in the intestinal tract. So if you've got a messed up gut and you've got gas and bloating and constipation, you got to clean that up if you want to really address what's going on in your brain.
And again, and that's why you do go to somebody who practices a functional medicine approach. I used to get really frustrated when I actually did consultations with people because, I'd spend an hour and a half or 2-3 hours trying to dig to the root, get down in there and like figure out why you got to figure out why you have what you have before you can actually do anything to fix it, or for me, it's either how do you fix it or how do you prevent it? Like, if you don't want to have these issues, what do I do? It's, it's a blend of all those things that you just mentioned that I mentioned previously.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Do you want to talk a little more about nutrition and what kind of nutritional factors you think are really important? I know blood sugar imbalance is really crucial, and in this society with the overuse of high glycemic carbohydrates and sugar foods, that's a really big issue.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could spend a day and hours of discussing the nutritional, link to this. One of the things I think that I've gotten good at is, instead of telling people what not to do, I tell people what to do. And then when they say, well, what about this? I'm like, well, was it in the what I said to do part? I mean, sorry, I'm a super science, like I'm super freak, like smart on science, but I'm also super awesome at, like, and no offense to people, but kind of like, I won't say dumb it down, I was going to, but like, I like doing things foundationally and fundamentally. Like, it doesn't have to be hard. So I'm going to go back to.
That's great. That's one of the hardest things to do, is to make the science easy to understand for people who don't have hours reading journal articles like you and I do.
Well, so again, I'd rather not get into like you just talked about the sugars and all that stuff and the negative effect they have. I'd rather just tell people this, like, hey, if it's not a whole food, meaning it's not in its original form, like apple sauce isn't necessarily an apple because usually the skin's not there and they add stuff to it. So, if it's not a whole food, so going back to, instead of like listing off all the possible things, it's a lot easier for me just to go, hey, fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, legumes, meat, pork, chicken, fish, those are all, and everybody's like, pork, really? Meat, really? I'm like, yeah, leaner cuts, and that's what you eat. So, and then I get these people that say, well, what about my Czech cereal? I'm like, I know, and I want to, I really do want to go, you're smarter than that. But then I think like there really are people that don't have that common sense. So again,
have you taken a look at the supermarket, David? We got row after row of foods, like, I know, so boxes and cans and packages, and Yeah,
and I'm not trying to dodge your question either, okay? But at the end of the day, the reality is like, hey, if it's not on that list, you shouldn't, and you definitely have a problem. I always saw, like, one of my favorite things was like, if you're diabetic, right, and like critically diabetic, right, you've got those blood sugar swings that are just like, you ended up in the hospital.
Yeah.
All right, so I associate that with this. You are covered in gasoline and you're playing with matches. Okay.
I hate to tell you, I treated a number of patients with diabetes, and there's a lot of people that are just don't want to test. They hate to test. They're all over the place.
No, I know, but that's what it is. It's like, how much do you appreciate your life?
Right.
And so that's when I go, if it's not on my list, like how else can I say it? So that's my answer to the diet part. Seriously, if you really if you're dealing with a health challenge and you really are sick of it, and maybe you are on medication, and I run into this a lot. People are like, well, I'm really tired of taking my XYZ for whatever the challenge is. And then I say, like, I had a guy call in, I had a radio show. I had this guy call in my radio show one time, and he's like, well, I've got type 2 diabetes, and my doctor's talking about putting me on insulin, la, la, la. And I'm like, well, you got to, like, I just told you, like, you got to avoid all those processed food, sugar, focus on those foods. He's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that. And I'm like, wait, all right, so you got to decide which you want to do. You want to take your meds that cause other side effects? And I ran into a medical doctor the other day. It was totally like dialed in on it. She was like, hey, I'm finally, and it's just, you never know what causes that epiphany, but, she's like, wow, I finally realized that when I prescribe this medication for blood pressure, that the blood pressure comes down, but I just gave them 10 other problems, and I've been doing this long enough, and I'm sure you have as well, that I've seen enough with those people that really are committed to the program of getting their exercise, eating the right foods after and then getting well. And it's when you get well that then you can play with it a little bit. You can go out with your friends and not worry about, or a holiday or birthday or whatever, and you can go ahead and have whatever you want, and you can skip a day of working out. But until you get there and you really want to get off your meds, like I can't tell you how many times people are like, oh man, I lasted like 4 weeks and I just said the heck with them, just take my blood sugar pill, like, well then stop complaining about taking it. All right, sorry, Ben, I got kind of crazy there.
Hey, I totally agree with you. I've heard the same kind of story. So what kind of alternatives are there for people, who want to find another approach for depression and anxiety?
All right, so I'm going to start with depression, and I'm going to cover it really quick, okay? Because I'm going to just focus on the supplemental side of things. I trademarked years ago herbal pharmacist, because when I got started on all of this, I really only understood the herbal part of it. Now I'm like a natural, healthy lifestyle guy, but we'll still focus on, I'm going to cover a few herbs. So on depression, in Germany, or in Europe, they've been prescribing for years a standardized extract of St. John's wort, or however you want to pick it, that was used for mild to moderate depression. Keywords, mild to moderate. Again, if people are already being treated, then, you can't just throw this in and mix it with what you're already taking, because depending on the type of medication you're taking, it could cause even more side effects for people. But that's really like kind of my go-to. But again, it's mild to moderate. It's good for people if you have that thought in the back of your head of like, well, maybe it's more than just that. Well, then you need to seek help. You need to find out what's really going on. And then, of course, throwing in those other components that I mentioned. And I know that's probably oversimplifying it. I mean, I had this elaborate approach for people to help balance neurotransmitters when it came to that kind of stuff. And it was, high in certain B vitamins and magnesium and, adding serine and choline and all those types of things. We don't really have time for that on this. And I didn't necessarily want this show to necessarily go down that path anyway. I think what is better to get into is when we use the word anxiety, I think it gets used loosely. In all honesty, I feel like, Ben, that what we're talking about is we're just stressed out. We have a high stress lifestyle. And for that, I've got a lot of really cool things. I mean, for years I've been, I'm always learning. I've got 3 herbs that I can talk about real quick that help with that stress component. Help take the edge off in different ways or help the body adapt. Again, these are not a replacement necessarily for diet, exercise, spirituality as well. I can tell you though that they help. I mean, like they help quick until you can learn. It's hard to change everything at one time. So, and the cool thing is, I talked to you about this right beforehand. I got a little globe here, right? So the reason I have the globe is the 3 herbs I'm going to talk about come from 3 different, completely unique regions of the world. They have been used by indigenous tribes in those areas for hundreds of years. And now in the last, couple of decades or so, we in the natural medicine and modern medicine field have actually identified why. They've done clinical trials. So everything I'm going to talk about actually has clinical research behind it to prove, how much and that kind of stuff. And I've actually got some things I can show on the screen if that's okay with you too.
Sure, that'd be great.
Right, cool. So I'm going to start in South Africa, way down at the bottom. I'm sure they don't like me calling the bottom of the globe, but so Southern Hemisphere, there was a tribe there that's been using an herb that comes from a succulent, like a type of cactus. And the tribesmen were using it on hunting missions. It helped kind of keep them calm and relaxed and focused. It even actually helped kind of curb their hunger, because that part of South Africa. I think it's actually the oldest known still living like existent civilization on the planet. You know, other civilizations have died off, and this is like the oldest tribe we know of. If people want to learn about them, it's the San tribe, or SAN. Really cool stories on the internet on that. But anyway, the herb that we get and that we have available to us now that came from that is called Zembrin. I don't know if I can get a close up of the spelling, but it's on the bottle. It's Zembrin. This is just one of the many brands. So the ingredient's called Zembrin. Again, Zembrin. The clinical research on Zembrin in humans showed that a small dose of 25 milligrams worked really fast. Literally within 2 hours, it affected the stress center of the brain in a positive way. The research showed that it helped relax you, calm you down, but not cause drowsiness. A lot of things that de-stress us or help us kind of unwind, we'll say, will cause drowsiness. And actually those things will normally make you lose focus and concentration, whereas the research on Zembrin says small dose once a day in the morning helped improve your ability it helped you relax and calm down really quick. I actually started using it about 8 weeks ago, and it works. It's cool. But it also helped improve the people that took it. It helped improve their ability to concentrate and focus. And then one of the things that kind of goes hand in hand with the stress module, and actually attended a seminar in Geneva where I was just yesterday or 2 days ago on the whole thing with stress. And one of the things with stress is it affects your sleep. And so what they found in their studies was that it helped to relax you. We'll say chillax. We're mellow. Improve your concentration and focus, and actually helped a lot of people improve their quality of sleep at night. It's not a sleep aid per se. You don't take it at bedtime. It really needed to be taken in the morning to have that sleep component added to it. So that's Zembrin.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any comments or you want me to keep on going.
No, that sounds kind of interesting. It's not something I've heard of. Would that be considered an adaptogenic herb?
No, actually, my next one is more adaptogenic.
Okay.
No, that's more of to me, that's like more experiential. Like the fact that you can truly feel it work.
Okay.
And literally within a couple of hours, my publicist even told me she started taking. She's like, "Oh my God!" Like, within a couple of days, I noticed a huge difference in just, like I said, a lot of things that relax you. They actually will affect your ability to concentrate and focus. They will make you drowsy, maybe a little too much, and so it works differently. My next herb, though, we're going to go to Siberia.
Okay.
All right. So we're going all the way up, and think of the environment in Siberia. Never been there personally. Not necessarily sure I really want to go there. It's a very harsh environment. The people there have been using adaptogens.
Just say something bad about Putin. You'll end up there.
I'm going to try to stay away from politics, okay? and half the people are going to love me and half of them are going to hate me. And I just, we got to make sure we appeal to the Putin lovers. Yeah. Hey, believe whatever you want to. In my head, I could think you're an idiot. But right now, believe whatever you want. I'm cool. Anyway, so you said adaptogens. So the people that listen to and watch your podcast, they're probably familiar with adaptogens, right? I mean, you cover them a lot. Yep. All right, cool. So the adaptogen I'm going to talk about today is rhodiola, rhodiola. I brought an example. I've got a couple of examples of rhodiola that you can find pretty easy at health food stores. You might even sell products like this, Ben. I don't know. We do. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, then I'll put them down. So rhodiola is an adaptogen, and just real quick, my spin on adaptogens is when you're under stress, you're out of balance. I thought you were going to go with Siberian ginseng. Oh, well, we could go there. We could go with ashwagandha. I mean, there's a lot of them out. Right. That's a good one, though. I didn't know that rhodiola came from Siberia. Yeah, well, it comes from other areas, but the good stuff, man, it comes from Siberia. That sounded really bad. Purple stuff, man. Yeah, it brings a whole new definition to the herbal pharmacist if we go down that route. And I don't want to go there. But so when you're under stress, especially prolonged period of stress, it affects your endocrine system, the hormones, and you're out of balance like this. And what rhodiola and other adaptogenic herbs do is it helps slowly bring the body back into balance so that when you do have, and we have stress, I think, all day long for whatever it is. Like, I wouldn't say I'm like feeling stressed out, but right now when I do these interviews, I'm stressed out. My body takes a beating. My endocrine system is going, what's going on here? And that affects so many aspects of my health. So it brings me back into balance so that when I have this moment that's a little more stressful than others, I'm not going to go shoo like that. I'm going to be like, oh, it's just going to like hopefully help my body adapt to that change. Rhodiola, it works not only just on that psychological, mental health part of it, but it also works on the physical side of stress. So, and actually Zembrin does as well. So the difference here is that rhodiola doesn't work quick. It might take a week or two to work. It's helping your body kind of just be more balanced, I guess you could say. And actually, I have been taking rhodiola. I only learned about Zembrin a year ago. Like I said, I started taking it about 8 weeks ago. I've been taking rhodiola, 8 years, maybe longer, because I take rhodiola because I do work out. I do have a super freak active lifestyle, and I travel a lot. And for me, it also helps my immune system so that, I'm not necessarily going to get as worn down because stress wears you out. Okay. So
hey, on that Zembrin stuff, can you take it more than one time a day?
Pardon me?
The Zembrin, the first herb you talked about, can people take that more than once a day?
No, actually, the clinical trials say literally like 25 milligram capsule a day is really, and you need to take it in the morning at some point. I'm in California right now, and I'm getting to the point where if I don't take it soon, I can probably take it as late as 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But I find that if I take it like when I get up and I take my other supplements, it does, like I said, it works quick and it'll last me all day. But I feel like to get my day going, keep me calm and focused all day long, I need to take it just once a day in the morning.
Okay.
You may actually see Zembrin combined with rhodiola on the marketplace. You'll see Zembrin sometimes in sports supplements because, there's a positive effect there, kind of like I mentioned with the rhodiola as well.
Cool.
All right. So the last spot, we're going to kind of go near, where'd my pin go? There it is. Well, this is in the southern part of Mexico, but the herb that we're going to talk about, passion flower, was used by the Aztecs. It was used in Polynesia. Passion flower is so different than the other two in that actually the Aztecs used it for insomnia. So this is where I normally will recommend passion flower for people that, you're just so wound up and you are that person that's like, oh yeah, man, I come home from work, I'm all wound up and I pour myself and we'll fill in your favorite adult beverage. Because this will cause drowsiness. It's more for me for people that have trouble sleeping because of the stress than anything. But as I said earlier, like with the Zembrin, I don't really have trouble sleeping. You can ask my wife, like I don't have trouble sleeping. But I noticed I slept better, which is really kind of a cool thing. I slept deeper. So Zembrin does work, but it's not going to kick my butt. Like if I take passion flower, it's going to kick my butt. It's going to make me drowsy. Some people may even have trouble operating a car. So it's not something I'm going to take it, in the morning before I work because I feel like I'm going to lose my concentration and focus taking passion flower. But it's been one of my go-tos for taking the edge off years ago, and it does work pretty quick. Probably 45 minutes, however long it takes to digest it, I guess you could say. Sometimes I'll even recommend it, and I do have an example of it in capsule form here, but I tend to like it in liquid form if you really want it to work quick. A lot of times in natural products for sleep, it'll be combined with things like lemon balm and valerian root. So those are the 3 main herbs. Again, I feel like the Zembrin and rhodiola you can use together, and that's something I am now doing because they work differently, and I feel like I want the benefits of what both offer me as opposed to just the benefit of one.
Cool.
But you can get by with one. I'm just saying. But, if I was going to pick one out of three, I'd start with Zembra because I feel like it crosses more pathways. But I also feel like taking something like rhodiola, man, there's a lot of other cool stuff that goes on there too.
So would you say that somebody dealing with mild depression or anxiety who's never taken anything would do well to try one or all three of these herbal formulas?
I would not recommend passion flower for someone that has, those down feelings.
Okay, so that's more for sleep.
Yeah, because, I feel like anytime we add something that kind of brings you down, slows the mind down a little bit, like I feel like passion flower does. I feel like, like I mentioned earlier in the beginning about alcohol and how, it can keep the wheel going the wrong direction. And actually, an alcohol causes nutrient depletions that your body actually needs those nutrients to make and balance your neurotransmitters. So you're kind of like digging yourself a deeper hole by doing that.
Right.
So no, I wouldn't say that. If you are stressed out, the three things that I talked about, they all work really well. Again, it all boils down to like, what level are you at? Like if you're feeling, I think you said hanging yourself earlier, if you're feeling that down and out, then you need to seek professional help. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was going through a really just horrific part of my life. And actually at one point was being treated by a counselor for PTSD. Like that's how crazy it was. And so for me, it was changing my diet, making sure I got my exercise. For me, making sure I was really grounded in my spiritual walk and taking supplements. But as an adjunct to all that, sometimes you got to talk it out with people. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what the root of your wires touching in the wrong way. And so I feel like it's always a good idea. Maybe, you call your doctor or, somebody that you trust in the medical profession and say, it'd be really cool to find it. And counseling, I used to think counseling was for idiots. I hate to say it that way, but man, I'll tell you what, my counselor really helped me, dig to the root of some other things that really helped me, not just the traumatic life stuff I was dealing with, but also helped dig to the root of why maybe I wasn't handling those situations as well. And I'm sorry, Ben, I'm giving you a really long-winded answer on that, but
No, that's great.
I feel like people need to know it's more than just one thing. Yeah, these supplements rock. None of the three would I be something for depression at all. And again, that's a disease state anyway, so I can't really use those words. But for stress, I feel real comfortable. These work. But if you're like way out there, you're feeling like ramming your car into somebody, or I hate to say it, but like, road rage is a big deal, and that's like you're not handling your stress well.
Yeah. Okay, David. So I think that's pretty good, right? Any final thoughts you want to tell our listeners?
No, I feel honestly like I got real long-winded in a few spots, and I feel like if people have questions, they can either go back and listen to this again, I welcome people to email me directly on my website, herbalpharmacist.com. But no, I don't really have a lot to add, Ben.
Okay, great. And that's the best way for people to get a hold of you is to go to theherbalpharmacist.com.
Yeah, herbalpharmacist.com. And I have social media links there as well. And then, of course, when you put this available, I'll make sure that I reciprocate sending the links out on all my social media as well, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. So awesome. I feel like it was a great topic today. So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Enjoy talking to you again, and I'll talk to you sometime in the future. Thank you, David.
Take care.